Hello, everyone. Dr. James Marcum with another biblical prescription for life. Thank you for joining me once again. And I want to encourage you to leave your comments below, give us a like, and join us on our newsletter. Our newsletter sort of helps everyone keep informed to what Heartwise Ministries and Biblical Prescription for Life, how God is leading. Today, I want to talk about the 700,000 extra deaths that have been noted in the age group from 25 to 44 years of age in the year of 2023. I want to talk about that, the news, the different news sources out there, how you know what to believe. It's sometimes difficult. A lot of people are wondering why these things happen. We're going to explore that a little bit today, so put on your thinking caps. But before that, I've been reading in Ephesians. This was Paul's letter to the church in Ephesus, and he writes something that was very useful for me to understand in Ephesians 1, verses 10. Chapter 1, verse 10 in Ephesians. That in the dispensation of the fullness of the times, he might gather together in one all things in Christ, both which are in heaven and which are on earth in him. So the key word that's mentioned so many times in Ephesians is in Christ. So God had a plan, and that plan was delivered in Christ. We're going to talk about that a little bit, but just remember, in Christ, in time, together, he's going to fix things in Christ. So recently, it's been brought to my attention that there's been 700,000 extra deaths in the age group from 25 to 44 years of age in 2023. This is a lot of individuals, unfortunately, extra deaths, and this happens in the working class in America. These are people in the prime of life, which many people are out there in the news sources. You know, we have the good news, we have bad news, we have toxic news, we have news that's trying to influence the way we think. News is coming everywhere, and these news inputs themselves can cause problems. They can cause stress, which can trigger inflammation, which can change the way we think and even act and behave. So the news sources are important. So the news is spinning this many different ways. So they want to know why this has happened, and I want to know why this happens too. But more than that, once we know why something happens, let's have a plan to prevent it from happening again. So just like in this Ephesians 1 verses 10, this lets everyone know that God has a plan. God has a plan. So why is this happening, and what is the plan? Well, there's been many different speculations in the news. It's because some people say the extra deaths from car accidents, different toxins like fentanyl, mental health problems. The chronic disease epidemic is catching up with this age group, the diabetes, the heart attacks, the hypertension. And of course, a lot of people think that the mRNA vaccine that all of this age group received, this gene therapy, also had something to do with this elevated death rate in 2023. Well, in thinking about this, I always enjoy learning from history, as history seems to repeat itself. Well, here is a picture of Dr. Oliver Wendell Holmes. Lots of people remember Dr. Oliver Wendell Holmes as a famous poet, which he was in the 1800s. A lot of people remember him through his son, Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., who was on the Supreme Court. But what can we learn from Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr., the doctor? Well, one of the things, he said a lot of different things. And one of the things that I really liked about Dr. Holmes is he went to medical school in the Boston area and didn't feel like he was learning what he learned. So he wasn't afraid to go to the school in Paris, where they taught him the innovative ways in medicine. They were getting rid of things like bloodletting at that time and things that were just antiquated, that just weren't working, that the old establishment, the group was holding on to. So he was brave and he went over there. Now, his father was a minister, so he had a sort of a spiritual background behind all of this. And he began to write poems at a young age. That's what he was famous for. But he was also interested in many things, and he was not afraid to speak out. And the things he wrote seemed to make the news over time. So one of the things that he said about science is this: science is a topography of ignorance. From a few elevated points, we triangulate vast spaces, enclosing infinite unknown details. So he really was skeptical of the world that he lived in, realizing there was so much more that we didn't understand. And yet we were so wise in our own eyes that we tried to prove this. So he demonstrated this in his life when he went over to Paris and learned. He came back, and there he began to realize that the best recovery for physiology was to align our bodies with the framework that was given in nature. So he tried to do that with his patients and with his teaching. He also, a lot of people don't know this, but he introduced the stethoscope to society. He coined the word anesthesia. And remember, he died in the 1890s, so this was before anesthesia. He coined the word of this process that we use so often today. But one of the greatest things that he did, that he would brought to the news, was he realized that the young people of his time, like the young people of our time, was dying at rapid rates, and no one really understood why. So he speculated this theory called puerperal fever. So he noticed that in obstetrics gynecology, when they were giving birth, they were not washing their hands, and they were passing germs from person to person. This was creating fever. There was a lot of young deaths. Young Americans were dying, a lot of excess death, especially in women giving birth. Well, he started throwing out this theory. And of course, you know what the naysayers said in the news, especially the obstetrics gynecologists, they said, no, this is crazy. This is not happening. We are not causing the deaths of our patients. We're not contributing to the problem. So Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr., Dr. Oliver Wendell, he brought this news to the public, and they didn't want to hear it. It was bad news. No one wanted to hear it. And later, years down the road, eventually the germ theory was introduced. So he was far ahead of his time, and we found out at that time that the extra deaths in the women were caused by this puerperal fever, the spreading of germs. Wow. This was a very brave man. He was very revolutionary. You might want to check him out. Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr., Doctor. He also wrote a lot of poems at that time. He was very well in the literary crowd as well, but a lot of people don't realize he was a doctor. What does this historic story have to do with the 700,000 extra deaths that are in the news and everyone's speculating why? Well, at that time, they speculated why as well. I want us to realize that we don't need to be wise in our own eyes. Much that we wish we know, we don't know. But there is a source of truth that's ahead of science, and that's in the Bible. That's why we're going to biblical prescriptions. And in the Bible, in Ephesians 1 verse 10, we see that there is a plan for the problem that's infected the earth, this germ that's infected the earth, this broken relationship with God, leading to poor thinking, poor decisions, selfishness, fear, and death, and sin. All of those things. There's a solution to this. There is a plan. And just like in Oliver Wendell Holmes' day, sometimes people that speak out against this are marginalized because sometimes the truth takes time to come out. But eventually, the truth, freedom, comes out. So we talk about the different causes of all these things, and what do I think is the cause? Well, I don't know, but if you think about what's going on in our society, it's probably many things that are contributing to the extra death in this age group. It's probably a combination of a toxin, the mental health problems, chronic disease, and all of this could be spurned, all of this could be made worse by this spike protein, this spike inflammation. That was a word that I coined, that I have all sorts of information on our website at heartwiseministry.org. Could it be that this spike problem, whether it was a spike protein or the mental health or the isolation, accelerated chronic disease, mental health problems, another toxin that accelerated aging, caused inflammation, caused premature problems? Could it be? I don't know for sure, but it's definitely a possibility. It's something to think about. But whether we can understand why this happened and solve the problem to this, I don't know. It took years for them to solve the problem that Dr. Oliver Wendell Holmes found in the germ theory. It didn't happen in his lifetime. I hope things happen sooner in our lifetimes as we contemplate all of these inputs that are coming into society, both from the news, all these inputs that we get from the internet, the social media. It's hard to figure things out. And that's why I'm throwing this information out there, this input, something that you can put in your brain and see if it makes sense to you. But the big points today is sometimes it takes time to understand the truth. And sometimes people are out there saying things ahead of their times, and they're being ridiculed and marginalized, like Oliver Wendell Holmes. And yet years later, it showed to have some truth to it. Well, on a much larger level here, we have a problem in our world. We have a virus that's infected us, that's been going on for thousands and thousands of years. And in this verse here, there is a plan. In Ephesians 1 verse 10, that in the dispensation of the fullness of the time, that in time there is a plan, he might gather together, God might gather together in one all things, all created things, and he does this through the solution in Christ, the Word, the truth, with his blood, the bread of life. He gives us to this. So this is the solution in Christ, and it can be applied when we accept Christ, when we abide in Christ, and this is the solution to our germ-infected DNA, what's affecting the way we think, that's causing all sorts of problem. And this is the solution not only for both of which are in heaven, but also which are on earth in him. And Paul says this over and over, that the key to all of this, the solution, is in Christ. So the solution ultimately to our health problems is being in Christ. That's our long-term solution. That was a long-term solution in the 1830s, whether people talked about it very much or not. That was the solution then. It's the solution for these excess deaths and the problems we're having now, being in Christ. So that's the purpose of Biblical Prescriptions for Life and Heartwise Ministries, to give you hope, to give you encouragement, and point you to a source of truth that's far ahead of what science has discovered. So read through Ephesians, see what you think, leave your comments below. There's lots of truth. There's lots of science there. There's lots of ways to change our physiology just in the book of Ephesians. So as we think about these 700,000 extra deaths, as we think about all of the maternal deaths and all of the deaths throughout time, I also want us to think that God has given a plan. He's given us a remedy. We must apply the remedy to have the ultimate solution that we're all looking for. So I'm Dr. James Marcum, thanking you for joining me with this yet another biblical prescription for life.